Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about saturation and not just about the simple operation of dialing up the saturation slider and pushing in a lot of saturation. Today we're going to talk about a new tool that gives you much more flexibility and in a lot of cases also a cleaner result. And that is a DCTL created by mononotes.com. Its creator is Stefan, and sorry Stefan, I'm not going to pronounce your last name. I will just butcher it, so out of respect I'm just going to stick with Stefan. I've been in touch with Stefan a few times about his DCTL, and I've been trying it out for a few days now. DCTL stands for DaVinci Color Transform Language, and basically it's just math. It's a script that DaVinci can read, just like a LUT is a lot of math that takes your footage from one color space to another. A DCTL is something DaVinci will read, and luckily for guys like me who has got no clue about the math, it's just a simple drag and drop operation and you're good to go. You can go to mononotes.com, you can try out a free demo version and try all of these out right now for yourself. You just install them in your LUT folder, you can rename them if you like, and then you just restart DaVinci and they'll be in your DCTL drop down. Let's get to it. Let's jump on over to DaVinci Resolve and let me show you here what I've got and how they work. Okay, so here we have a timeline with a test clip from Ari. It's a raw footage, and normally if you take a look at the scopes down here, what you do if you just dial up the saturation slider is if you take a look at the parade over here and you bump in a lot of saturation, you're going to see that the brightness of the image will shift upwards as well, and pretty soon it's going to look not really nice, right? It's going to look a little video-like almost. It's not a way you have a lot of control, and you can obviously use saturation a lot of times if you just want to punch in that little bit of extra saturation, but it's an overall adjustment. If you look at the vector scope as well over here, you can see it's just uniformly adding saturation all the way around. And obviously you have the curves where you can introduce luminance or change the Hue Shift, or you can specify which saturation of which value you want to change in the hue and saturation sliders or curves, but it doesn't really give you a lot more control than that. So I'm going to delete that node and let me show you the first DCTL. You find your DCTL effect and you drag it onto your node, and then you'll get a drop down of all the DCTLs you have installed. So once you downloaded them from mononotes.com, you put them into your LUT folder and you restart DaVinci and they'll show up here in your drop down folder. Now you can rename them in your LUT folder if that makes more sense, or if you have a system that you kind of want to have them in order, you can rename them like you want to and they will show up with the new names here. So I just capitalized the density and Desat Hue Shift words here so I can easier find the DCTLs. So you'll notice there's a saturation T and a saturation without a T. So here I have a standard or a set without a T, and here I have, let me set that to T, and T just stands for tetra. That's just the mathematical model that is used to convert the colors. Some of the other ones use RGB or HSL, HSV color spaces. So it's just different ways of interpreting color. And there's no right or wrong way to apply the DCTLs. There's no DCTL that's better than another. It all depends on your footage and the look you want. So you can kind of like try them out or find out what works best for you if you want to use the the tetra version or the non-T version. It's just a different way of using the math. So let me show you here. Again, apply the T version here, and if you look at let's take the blue here in the background. So if you take a look at the vector scope down here, you can see it just pump information into the blue. So that goes out of the straight line, just straight towards blue, and the sliders go from a value from 0 to 1. So pretty basic, and it's the same you will get from the hue versus sat sliders, but the difference is it will give you a little bit cleaner results. So you can just try out if you want to use the sat T, or you can disable that and you can use the other one, and you can grab a still of the two and see which one you like the best, and you can zoom in and see which one gives you the cleanest result. So pretty basic. So let's jump on over to the next DCTL, which is the density. These are really cool. If you take a look at the blue colors down here, and I'm trying to adjust the background here, I just have a DCTL. I applied the density, the T, as you can see here, is just the tetra version, and I'm going to compare that to the regular density slider. And if you can take a look at the two here on your left, you can just see the only difference is one is working in the tetra color space and the other one is not. So it's just different math. There's no right or wrong way to use these. It just depends on how they look on your image, which one you like the better. So there might be slight differences between the two. So let's disable the non-tetra and take a look at the colors here in the background, and let's bring some density into the blue background here. So this slider goes from 0 to 1. And just like you wouldn't adjust your saturation slider all the way up to 100, you probably wouldn't want to go more than 0.6, 0.7 on these, depending on your footage. But for the sake of comparison, I'm going to bring this all the way up to 1. And if you take a look at the blues down here in the vector scope, you can see how they get compressed together. And you can see you get this thick, dense blue color. So before and after, before and after. And if I grab a still of that and disable this node and try to do the same with the non-tetra version, and if I compare the two, you can see here the difference is very subtle. If I zoom in here in the middle, you can see there's a minute difference, but there's a difference even though the settings are the same. So it's just a matter of what you prefer, which one you think looks the best. And here obviously you can control all the density and all the colors. So if we take a look at her lipstick and the red patches here, you can see how it reacts. If you look at the red, it just gives this cool looking, really subtle, dense look to the image. And if you take a look at the vector scope, you can see how you bring it in. So it's just a very nice way to control your saturation. So for the Desat DCTLs, we also have two versions. So if we take a look, if I enable the two versions, I have a Desat A, and if you take a look over here, I have the option to go from 0 to 1. And if I have the Desat B enabled, you can see I have the same option, but I also have a brightness slider. So I can bring some of the brightness back or push it up again. And then you have the standard global blend. So the only difference between the Desat A and the Desat B is that you have more options. They are both working in the tetra color space, or tetra math model. So they should more or less do the same. You just have more options in the Desat B version. So again, if you take a look at the blue, kind of like the blue here because it reacts very much to the input here. So if I go to the blue Desat up here, and if you take a look, you'll see you'll push it towards cyan until it gets all lined up straight towards cyan over here. And if you take a look at the scopes, you can see you keep your brightness. So you can actually go down to your brightness slider and you can pump it up or bring it down as you like. So you just got this extra option in your Desat B DCTL. But again, really, really nice way. And if you take a look, if we zoom in a lot here, and just what I want you to notice is the cleanness of this. So I desat the blues here. Let's grab a still of that. And then let's create another node after this and do the same with a hue versus curve. So hue versus set. I'm going to disable this node. Yeah, I'm going to select the blues here and I'm going to desat this one. And if you compare the two versions here, if we really zoom in, look at the hue versus curve here. Look at all the noise you get from DaVinci's hue versus curves. And look at the edges here. Not really smooth or nice, right? Look at this compared to the edges here in the DCTL. And most of all, look at how little noise you're getting here. So we have absolutely almost no noise here. You really, really have to zoom into 500–600%. Whereas in the standard tools, you get the noise here. So this is very easy to overlook. And maybe you have a frame where there's a scene where there's a lot going on and you don't notice it. But if you have it's more easy in a setup like this where there's not much movement. So maybe you won't notice it yourself. But now we can see there's a little bit of a jitter here. If I zoom in, you can really see it. Whereas in the other one with the DCTL, you can see. So let me disable this one. It's a lot less and it's a lot more uniform and it's a lot cleaner. And I even bumped it up to 1.0. You wouldn't go that far. You would keep it around 0.6, 0.7, and then you would have a much, much cleaner result. So that's one of the biggest reasons to use the DCTLs, apart from the very granular and fine-tuned control you get over your saturation in all aspects of saturation. You also get a much cleaner result. So that's really, really cool and one of the greatest things about this. And I'm going to show you that even more so in the next one, the Hue Shift DCTLs. And this is probably the one I'm the most excited about. And again, you have two versions of the Hue Shift. So if you take a look at the list here, you have an A and a B working in the Tetra model. And you have a non-Tetra version that you can see here, Mono Hue Shift version 2.0. So let's reload all these, reset them. So the difference between the A and the B is just, if you take a look at the blues here again, and if you take a look at the vector scope here, you can switch shift the blues to cyan by going left from 0 to -1 or going right to magenta from 0 to +1. So it's just a slider that brings your hues from one side of the hue to the other, and the B version is just split up, so you have a blue to cyan slider that brings it all the way up from 0 to 1, and one that goes the other way from blue to magenta from 0 to 1. So it's just another way of setting up the sliders, but they're doing the same thing. So I'm going to disable this one. I'm just going to clear out my galleries here. And then I'm going to, let's make sure we have this one enabled. We're going to reload that. And let's try to bring the blue all the way to cyan. And you take a look at the scopes down here. You can see you get this perfect cyan line here. It stops at 100% cyan. And let's disable this node so we're sure nothing else is on. And let's zoom in quite a bit so you can see the difference here. Let's play through. You can see it's pretty clean. And again, normally you wouldn't go all the way up to 1. You would probably stop at 60 or 70% and make it a little more subtle and more natural. But I'm going to bring it up so we can really see the difference here. So to compare with DaVinci's tools, let me reset that and go into the hue versus hue slider, and I'm going to use my qualifier to select the blues here and bring them up to cyan all the way up. Let's make sure I'm on the right node and enable that. Again, select, bring it up, and take a look at this. Now, if I enable the mononodes DCTL, grab a still of that so we can compare it, disable that node, go back to DaVinci's hue versus hue, and compare the two. Look at the difference here. So let's zoom in even more. On the left, you have DaVinci's hue versus hue. Look at all the noise you get. Look at the rough edges here. And if you play it through, look how much jitter you got going on. And you can even see it from far away. And if I disable that and use the monochrome DCTL, look how clean that is. This is like a totally different kind of adjusting your hue. And that's why I really like this. Not just the DCTL doesn't just give you more control and more granular control of everything related to saturation, but the main aspect here is what you see here, the cleanliness. Okay, and the last one here you have is just another hue shift. Again, you can shift your blues if you enable that from magenta to, from blue to magenta and blue to cyan, and you just get another kind of math behind the scenes here, and you see this gives a little rougher edge than what you had before. So here we have the tetra version on the right, on and off, and you can see the non-tetra version. So in this instance, I would use the tetra version and make sure to check it through, and you can see that gives you the cleanest result. So let's try it on some other kind of footage. Here I have another image that, let's go maximum on this one. Density slider, let's reload this one and zoom in a bit. So the density, let's say you want to bring the density of the yellow in the background down a bit, and maybe even the blue sign here. We can work a little bit on that. So before and after, before and after. And again, when you play it through, you get really clean results. Really nice way of adjusting your colors. And again, you have a deep slider here that will bring some of the brightness back. If I enable the node, you can see I can tweak the brightness as I like. Moving on to the next image here, I just have some primaries. I just did a white balance and exposure corrections. And again, the density slider here, you can adjust the individual colors here. So let's bring the density in his face like so, and I just brought a little bit of brightness back to his face. And then here in the Hue Shift, let's reset that. Hue Shift, etc. I'm going to use version B, and I'm going to switch the greens a little bit towards yellow, and the yellows a little bit towards red like so. And let's bring a little bit of cyan into the sky like so. So these two nodes, on or off and on. Look how nice that is, and very clean result again. So just off and on. Cool way to get really nice looking cinematic colors into your image. And again, what I did on this one, the density slider, let me just reload that. So I brought some density into the reds, the greens, and maybe the shirt. I didn't really like how it was sticking out like this, so you can See the density, and then I added the Hue Shift, and you can kind of like tweak your greens, so whatever you like. So put together before and after, and everything plays nice and clean. Just a really cool way again of adjusting your colors. So let me say straight out of the box, I have no affiliation with Mononodes. I did this review from my own experience, and I just really like them, and I think you should yeah, just go for it. You can get a demo version, try it for free and see if you like it. And that's it. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. Give us a thumbs up, and if you have any comments, leave it in the box below, and I'll be happy to answer, and see you in the next one. Happy grading.